Make a Deal with Santa. Written and narrated by Spookaria, and featuring Mad Chatter and Lucid Lupus. My grandmother would tell me to always leave food out for Santa. I don't know why. Each year, she would go overboard and we would end up donating a lot of food or throwing it all away. A long time ago, there was a psycho killer who killed her family and ended up taking one of her ears as a souvenir. So, she has a lot of issues, if you get my drift. My mother told me one Christmas my grandmother cried and cried, apologizing again and again, telling her it would have been better to end the pregnancy. My mother was used to this. All of my grandmother's quirks, and is pretty understanding by nature. My grandmother begged me to continue the tradition, that I had to do it or he will come back and won't forgive me. I get she has her issues from the trauma, but damn, she needs therapy or something. It is leading up to Christmas and the family all came together. So, I decided to try to speak to this Santa. I helped to prepare the incredible amount of food. Most of it would be given away to the homeless or the unfortunate after tonight, and they are always grateful, yet completely unaware of the servitude it took or the blind slavery. I was shocked one time. I saw him come and speak with her one night. I expected a monster. What I saw was someone who was kind, almost compassionate, but with a steely edge. Nothing like what I imagined. I looked outside and saw he actually had a sleigh. I had only one chance to do this. I crept past a disturbingly normal-looking reindeer, climbed inside and pulled presents over me. I knew this was stupid, but I had to find out what was going on. I don't know what was said. I heard his footsteps in the snow. He was humming to himself and paused at the side of the sleigh. For a moment, I thought he was going to lift the sack of presents and notice me. Instead, I felt the weight of the sleigh shift.
Onward! It is time to go to the next house. My darlings, up quickly now!
He called out jovially. The reindeers pranced before they took flight. He sounded like a happy grandpa. Santa rubbed his stomach and let out a burp with a good-natured chuckle.
Oh, she makes the best possible roasts. Oh, the roast potatoes and gravy are simply delicious.
He cooed to himself, reminiscing of the meal my grandmother had worked her hands to the bone to prepare. One that I had assisted in.
I wonder if little Timmy has been good this year. Well, he isn't so little anymore, is he?
Santa began to talk to himself, or to the reindeer. I didn't care, I wanted to find a way to speak with him. He hummed to himself and landed the reindeer. A dog barked violently before Santa whistled to him and the dog was silent. I didn't want him to hurt whoever Timmy was. When Santa went inside, I followed him, expecting a feast prepared, and instead saw an elderly man with a painted wooden train on the table. There was only a roast chicken, with a few potatoes, a pitcher of gravy, and a small bowl of peas. A meager feast compared to what my grandmother was forced to do every single Christmas.
Santa?
The old man's foggy eyes looked around the room. His words were filled with hope? What? The floorboards creaked as Santa walked into the small home. He placed a fatherly hand on Timmy's shoulder and squeezed gently.
Hello, Timmy. How are you? You're looking old these days.
Santa fondly said, and happily lifted the small wooden train. He seemed to reminisce and smiled in what I took for sentimentality. Fondness, even.
Even after all of these years, you kept it.
Yes. How could I forget?
The elderly man answered, a wide smile on his face, and Santa sat beside him to eat. His gloved hand touched the ventilator, and the pair of them knew the truth.
I believe, my old friend, this will be our last Christmas together.
Santa said. The elderly man's trembling hands moved to portion out the chicken when Santa stopped him.
No, let me.
Santa answered kindly, with expert speed slicing the meat and portioning out the food. I sat and listened while they spoke in confusion. Why was Santa being so damn considerate to someone who he had made a deal with? It didn't make any sense. Together they ate the food, laughed and enjoyed themselves. They spoke of past Christmases they had shared together. After a while, Santa paused and placed his hand on Timmy's shoulder.
It is time for you to leave us, my friend,
He said, and smiled softly.
It was good meeting you, and I wish you fortune in your next life.
Goodbye, Santa.
The whispered, choking voice came from Timmy, before a look of contentment came across his face as the old man passed away. Santa gently lowered the old man's head down to the table, turned his head to face the left side, and placed the wooden train in the dead man's hands.
Always sad when the good ones pass away. I need to find my next one sometime soon. Fortunately for me.
He paused, and I looked to the window when I ducked down and hid, praying he didn't see me. Fortunately, he didn't, and I crept back towards the sleigh to hide inside it again.
Oh, I hope the next one is a good cook. I can't stand it when they have to learn to cook or can't offer anything. There's nothing more wretched than a bad cook.
Santa said with a groan as he stepped inside the sleigh.
Onwards, my pretties. Up, up, and up.
Santa cheered, and I had a sinking feeling in my stomach.
Time for us to go home.
The last word had a grim, menacing sound to it. The sleigh lifted into the air, and I was filled with dread and regret. It grew cold. I shivered and wished I wore better clothing. I didn't think I would be doing this, and hoped I didn't make a bad decision. It became hard to breathe. I gasped and shivered before the world went black. I awoke with a jolt. Blinking, I stared up at the amused face of Santa staring down at me. I stared at him, dumbstruck. He offered his hand to me. I murmured words, jumbled phrases in fear, and he sighed.
I rarely, if ever, offer my hand to someone, especially someone who thought it would be wise to trespass.
He smirked, clicked his fingers, and I took his hand. The grip was firm. I had a feeling he could have easily crushed my fingers if he wished to do so.
Up we go.
He lifted me up and I smacked into his large frame. While I stared up at him, he looked grandfatherly and peaceful. Still, I couldn't shake that feeling. Where are we?
At the North Pole. Well, the German was busy.
He chuckled loudly and obnoxiously at his own joke before letting out an irritated sigh.
The youth never understand. Come on, do keep up.
I followed along. There was a cottage with a red brick factory, and otherwise, it looked surprisingly homely. Comfortable. I had so many questions. When I finally got the courage to ask him, I opened my mouth and heard a loud screech. What was that?
Oh. Oh dear. Oh dear. You're about to meet the elves. Well, one of them, at least.
I heard a scurrying sound. A creature came on all fours and I could see the glittering teeth. I backed up into Santa, who leaned down and whispered,
Don't pat it, whatever you do.
The small creature stopped in front of me. The small creature's eyes lit up.
Meat. All the master brothers meat.
It cooed and sniffed at me. I was tempted to smack it, but those teeth kept my fingers at bay. I looked up at Santa, hoping he would do something about it. Santa said and did nothing.
Oh, yes. Young. We haven't feasted in 100 years.
The elf nipped at my hands and I squealed, smacked at it.
Oh, it fights back. It will taste better. Oh, so delicious.
It lunged at me, while Santa murmured to himself about whether baked or mashed potatoes were superior. This time I wasn't so lucky. It connected with flesh and I heard the crunch. 3 of my fingers were taken, as the elf squealed in glee and frolicked off to chew. Santa glared down at me, shook his head and said,
I told you not to touch it.
A slow, sneering grin came across his face.
I take it you're here about your grandmother's oath to ease her suffering? An oath is made in blood, and I only end in blood. Your travels were for nothing.
My heart sank.
So delicious.
The elf cooed and gnawed at my fingers in the background. The sadistic sneer and a look of knowing.
I cannot think of what would be worse. Knowing the pledge will pass on to your daughter, to her daughter, to her daughter, until the bloodline ends.
He knew I was ready to make any deal in order to make it end.
My elves could always use some assistance. If you agree to take up service for 200 years, I will release your grandmother and her bloodline from that oath.
Santa said, extending his hand, that I accepted with my intact one. Yes, I whispered. Instantly, Santa's claws burst through the leather gloves and pierced my skin. Blood dripped down my hand, dropping onto the ground, and I knew the deal was struck. I tasted blood. My body twisted and contorted. My teeth fell out and were replaced with fangs, the same kind the elf had. I shrunk, hunched over, and my vision changed. I could no longer see color. The other elf was jumping up and down, cackling. I tried to speak. I wanted to speak, but only croaked sounds came out.
By the way, you and your grandmother are adopted.
I hope you enjoyed this story. Please do yourself a favor and check out part 1. It should be available in the link above. Definitely make sure you check out both of my talented guests, Mad Chatter, who was Santa before, and Lucid Lupus, who was both the voice of the old man and the elf. What did you think of the story? Please let me know in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like, comment, share it around, all of that. This video is made with the support of my incredible Patreons and channel members. Links down below if you would like to sign up. I hope you have a safe and happy holidays. Stay safe, my little spooklings. And remember, I'll be watching you.